At 07:42 a.m. on 27th January 1943, over the coast of Wilhelmshaven, the sky is a broken cathedral of vapor trails and burning aluminum. A B-17F named Red Queen drops out of formation, its number 2 engine, coughing black smoke the moment the supercharger fails. The German flak towers below have already found the altitude, burst patterns tighten, walking upward with mathematical cruelty. And on the ground far away, back at Thorpe Abbott's, T.S. Jack Harlow can still feel the wrench slipping from his right hand hours earlier, hear the hiss in the oil line he patched in the dark. It was a 50-second fix, a fix he isn't sure held. Inside the falling bomber, the pilot's voice breaks through the radio log. Red Queen to 100th, engine 2 overspeed, losing manifold pressure, can't hold her. Harlow isn't there to see it, but he will feel the consequence of this moment in every rivet, every smear of oil, every empty bunk that tonight will stay empty for good. ACT-1, set up. Frost clings to every metal surface at Thorpe Abbott's airfield on the morning of 27 January 1943. Even after sunrise, it refuses to melt. Sergeant Jack Harlow drags his gloved hand along the belly of Red Queen, feeling the thin crust crack under his palm. He has been awake for 3 hours, and dawn has not fully accepted that today has begun. Engines groan somewhere across the field as ground crews spin propellers to life, testing magnetos before the pilots even reach the hardstands. The 100th Bomb Group runs on preparation work, endless preparation work, and the crew chiefs are the uncredited ghosts keeping it alive. Jack squints at the fuel line he replaced the night before. Model A1 feed, standard routing from the main tanks, nothing unusual, but the adhesive had been slow to cure in the cold, and he had worked with a flashlight between his teeth. Lateef Miller, Red Queen's pilot, approaches with the easy swagger of a man who has not yet buried half the friends he will. "Morning, Jack," he says, stamping his boots. "Morning," Jack replies, not looking up. "Don't lean on engine 2 until she's warm. She's touchy today." The truth is, the engine is not touchy. He is. He climbs the scaffolding and taps the cowling with his knuckles. The sound is clean, full, but metal lies. Engines lie. B-17s lie every time the temperature drops below freezing. The only thing that does not lie is the maintenance log sitting in his breast pocket, pages stiff from oil stains and guilt. He signs off on the pre-flight, but the moment he steps back, he feels it, a pinch in his gut, like a radio signal only he can hear. Something is not right. Jack glances at the fresh chalkboard roster. Today's target, Wilhelmshaven. He exhales. That place eats B-17s alive. By the time Jack reaches the toolbox shed, the field hums like a hive. Ground crew chatter, engines coughing awake, clanking metal, shouted checks, toolboxes slamming shut. The 100th Bomb Group did not earn its name from heroes or banners. It earned it from statistics, each one written in blood. High loss days, dispersed formations, missions where only a fraction returned. The Luftwaffe learned the shape of their bombers, learned their tendencies, and hunted them accordingly. Jack kicks the mud from his boots and grabs rags to clean the number stencils on Red Queen's rudder. Behind him, mechanics are arguing over the cracked cylinder head on another B-17, heaven sent. A whole crew chief's day can vanish into a single crack like that. "Jack," he turns. It is Sepel Wyatt, his assistant. "Miller wants you at the briefing tent. Says the CO wants all chiefs present." Jack wipes his hands and heads toward the tent. The cold chews through his jacket. The path is slick, the mud frozen into ridges that catch his boots. Inside the tent, the air smells like wet wool and burnt coffee. A map stretches across the wall, flight paths, flak zones, Luftwaffe response points. "Gentlemen," the CO begins, "today we hit Wilhelmshaven's naval yards. Expect heavy resistance. Maintenance chiefs, triple check your birds. The Jerry radar has gotten sharp." Jack folds his arms. He knows what this really means. We are going somewhere the Germans will kill, to protect. After the briefing, Miller corners him. "You worried about something on the Queen?" Jack hesitates. "Maybe. Engine 2's line has a new patch." Miller grins. "Jack, I trust your work more than my own damn compass." But trust does not change physics, and physics does not care who lives or dies. As Jack walks back to the hard stand, a B-17 from another group limps in on 3 engines, smoke trailing. He watches it skid across the field and knows the day has not even started. Jack performs his final walk around in the grey morning light of 27th of January. Fuel caps secure, flaps tested, tyres holding pressure despite the cold, oil dilution complete. The bomber crew arrives, bundled in sheepskin and nerves. They slap the fuselage like it is a talisman. Jack steps back, letting them board, though every instinct screams to pull Miller aside and say, "If something happens to her, if something happens to you, that will be on me." But crew chiefs do not voice fear. They swallow it. He hands Miller the signed maintenance sheet. "Bring her back," Jack says, the words heavier than they sound. "We always do," Miller replies. Jack watches the bomber lumber toward the runway, engines trembling under the strain of cold start stress. Prop wash blasts his clothes. The smell of aviation gasoline drifts across the frost. Red Queen lifts into the sky at 08:15 hours. Formation assembly takes 20 minutes. 35 B-17s circling in the frozen air, finding their slots, tucking into combat boxes designed to maximize defensive firepower. Jack stands there until she becomes a speck against the grey cloud layer, and only then does he let himself feel it, a tightening in his chest, a whisper under the roar of distant engines, a fear the bloody Hundredth taught him too well. Today, someone is not coming home. He returns to the maintenance shed and finds a fresh message on his workbench. An airframe advisory warning of faulty fuel feed couplings on B-17F models, serial numbers including Red Queen's airframe. The bulletin is dated 25th of January 1943. It arrived 2 days late. Jack unfolds the advisory. A simple line turns his stomach. Failure risk increases under low-temperature climb conditions, which is exactly what the Queen is facing right now. Climbing through freezing air, superchargers straining, fuel lines stiff as bone. Jack slams the paper down. He should not have signed off. He should not have let her go. Jack races to operations, the advisory still crumpled in his fist. "Any word from the Queen?" "Formation check-in only," the operator replies without looking up. "All birds accounted for." That should reassure him. It does not. The advisory sits on the table between them like evidence at a court-martial. Wyatt reads it over Jack's shoulder. "You think it'll hold?" "I don't know," Jack says. "I patched it in the dark, 12 hours ago. Temperature was -4 Celsius. The adhesive compound used on fuel line couplings requires minimum cure time of 18 hours at temperatures above freezing. Jack's repair had neither. He had improvised with what he had: pressure wraps, sealant paste, hope. In peacetime, that B-17 would have been grounded pending full coupling replacement. But this is not peacetime. This is January 1943, and the 100th Bomb Group is hemorrhaging aircraft faster than replacements arrive. Every bomber that can fly, flies. Jack stares at the wall map. Red Queen is somewhere over the North Sea now, climbing to operational altitude. 25,000 feet, engine temperatures dropping, fuel pressure rising. every weakness in every seal and coupling stressed to its limit. A distant rumble shakes the windows. German reconnaissance planes spotted earlier mean one thing. The Luftwaffe is already climbing to meet them. Wyatt pours coffee from a dented thermos. You did what you could, Jack. That's all any of us do. But Jack knows the difference between what you can do and what should have been done. He knows the space between those two things is where men die. He pulls out his maintenance log and flips back through the pages. Red Queen's service history over the past 6 weeks. 11 missions, 4 engine changes, 16 documented repairs, countless field patches that never made it into the official record. The truth is, every B-17 in this group is flying on borrowed time and improvised fixes. The only question is which one runs out first. Jack is not there, but he has imagined the scene too many times not to see it. 30 miles offshore, at 09:20 hours, the Luftwaffe begins its dance. Messerschmitt Bf-109s above. Focke-Wulf FW-190s waiting to pounce. Vertical dives, slashing turns, gun passes timed to shred formations. Inside the Queen, Miller grips the yoke as the interphone crackles. Bandits at 1 o'clock. Tail gunner, tracking. Waist gunners ready. Formation flying becomes a practiced act of courage, holding steady while death screams in from every angle. The combat box formations of the 8th Air Force are designed for mutual defense, overlapping fields of fire from 50 caliber Browning machine guns, but the design only works if everyone holds position. Red Queen takes its first hits, 7.92mm rounds from a Bf-109's wing guns stitching across the fuselage. A gunner curses, someone shouts for more ammo, the oxygen system rattles as the cold deepens. Records later showed that German fighter tactics over the North Sea evolved throughout January 1943. Luftwaffe pilots learned to attack from 12 o'clock high, directly into the sun, exploiting the B-17's weakest defensive arc. They learned to focus fire on engines rather than fuselage, seeking the quick kill rather than the slow bleed. Engine 2 coughs once, just once, but everyone hears it. Miller checks his gauges. Oil pressure nominal, manifold pressure holding, cylinder head temperature within limits, but something in the sound is wrong. A hesitation, a stutter in the rhythm. The formation continues east toward the target. Flak begins at the coast, black bursts appearing like ink stains against the grey sky. The German 88mm guns fire with metronomic precision, each shell fused to detonate at 24,000 feet. In the waist of the bomber, the gunners brace against the turbulence. Shell fragments ping against aluminum. The smell of cordite and hydraulic fluid fills the cabin. Miller's voice comes through steady. Bomb run in 6 minutes. Bombardier your ship. But in the back of his mind, that cough from Engine 2 lingers like a bad omen. At Thorpe Abbotts, the operations tent becomes a space of measured tension. A radio operator calls out incoming messages, each one a lifeline stretched thin across enemy territory. Formation Bravo, reaching initial point at 09:45. Lead toggling at 9 minutes. Hawkeye 3 reports bandits closing from Sector 4. Jack stands in the doorway, arms folded against the cold. Anything from Red Queen? Nothing yet, the operator replies. Standard procedure. Crews maintain radio silence except for emergency traffic. No news should mean she is fine, but Jack knows radios lie the same way engines lie. Silence is just another kind of noise. Wyatt arrives with a thermos of bitter coffee. They'll be back, he says. Jack does not answer. He watches the clock on the wall. 10:02 hours. The formation should be over the target now. Bomb bay doors open. Bombardiers hunched over Norden sights. Flak thickening into a wall of fire. The radio crackles. Red Queen to Hundredth. taking heavy flak. Formation holding. Jack exhales. At least she is still flying. At least Miller is still transmitting. But the operator's face goes pale as a new message filters through. Falcon leader reports one ship. Down. No shoots observed. The tent goes quiet. Someone coughs. The teletype machine chatters in the corner, indifferent to the weight of what it records. Jack knows the mathematics of bomber operations. The 8th Air Force calculates acceptable loss rates at 4% per mission. Over a standard 25-mission tour, that becomes statistical certainty. Losses are not a possibility, but a schedule. Today's mission involves 35 aircraft from the 100th Bomb Group. 4% means 1 or 2 bombers will not return. The question is never if, but which. Another message. Formation turning for home. Bandits pursuing. The operator logs the time. 10-18 hours. Jack does the calculation. If the return flight is uneventful, the first bombers should appear over Thorpe Abbotts around 12:30 hours. 2 hours and 12 minutes to wait. 2 hours and 12 minutes to wonder if his 50-second patch job is holding together over enemy territory. The flak over Wilhelmshaven on 27 January 1943 is legendary. Black bursts stacked so tightly they form a wall. German 88mm guns fire with mechanical rhythm, their shells exploding at setter-perfect altitudes. Luftwaffe flak batteries have had 3 years to perfect their craft, and Wilhelmshaven's naval facilities are among the most heavily defended targets in occupied Europe. Inside the Queen, the bombardier calls out, "Steady, steady," bombs away at 10:04. The ship lurches as 500 pounds of ordnance drops free. For a moment, relief. The weight comes off. The bomber responds lighter on the controls. Then Engine 2 coughs again, violently. A shudder runs through the wing. Miller checks his gauges. Oil pressure dropping, manifold pressure unstable. The engine begins to overspeed, propeller governor fighting a losing battle. The supercharger whines at a pitch that should not exist. Alarms crackle through the interphone. Miller feathers the engine. Standard procedure for overspeed conditions. Pull the mixture to idle cutoff. Adjust propeller pitch to minimize drag, but the propeller does not respond. The coupling that controls blade angle, the same coupling Jack patched 12 hours ago, has failed. The propeller windmills freely now, spinning faster than design limits. The engine shakes. Metal fatigue accelerates with every revolution. Red Queen to 100th, Engine 2 failure, attempting to maintain formation. But the mathematics are unforgiving. A B-17 can fly on 3 engines, but not at formation altitude with a full fuel load. Drag from the windmilling propeller creates asymmetric thrust. Airspeed bleeds away. The Queen drops out of formation at 10:09 hours, 5 minutes after releasing her bombs. German fighters recognize the vulnerability immediately. A wounded bomber, separated from the protective firepower of the group. Miller's voice comes through the radio one final time. Red Queen to 100th, Engine 2 overspeed. Losing manifold pressure, can't hold. The signal cuts out. At Thorpe Abbotts, the radio operator logs the transmission at 10:11 hours. He does not look at Jack. He does not need to. The silence that follows tells everything. Smoke streaks behind the Queen as she drops toward the grey North Sea below. Hours later, at 12:15 hours, Jack waits at the edge of the airfield with dozens of others. Ground crews, mechanics, operations staff, everyone who has a reason to count the returning bombers. Far-off engines rumble. A sound he feels more than hears. The formation appears as dark specks against the overcast sky. 20 bombers, then 18, then 14. Jack's heart sinks. Where is she? Where is the Queen? Where is Miller? Crew chiefs line up like men on trial. each silently counting the survivors. One bomber limps in with the entire tail section shredded, fabric flapping in the slipstream. Another lands hot and skids across the grass, brakes smoking. Still no queen. The ritual of return is always the same. Bombers circle the field in a holding pattern, waiting their turn to land. The most damaged aircraft get priority. Holes in wings, engines trailing smoke, hydraulics failing. Jack watches each one touch down. He recognizes them by silhouette, by the way they fly, by the markings half obscured by flak damage. Not Red Queen. By 12:45 hours, 31 bombers have landed. 4 are missing. The radio tower confirms what everyone already knows. Losses exceed the acceptable rate. Today's mission cost the 100th Bomb Group more than statistics predicted. Operations begins compiling the casualty list. Names, serial numbers, last known positions. The teletype machine chatters, sending preliminary reports to 8th Air Force headquarters. Jack stands at the perimeter staring at the empty sky. Wyatt approaches quietly. "Jack, you should..." The radio tower crackles. Unidentified B-17 on approach. 3 engines. Heavy damage. Inbound from north. Jack starts running. He reaches the end of the runway as the bomber emerges from the cloud layer. The silhouette is wrong. Nose section damaged. Tail surfaces riddled with holes. But the number on the fuselage is unmistakable. Red Queen. She is flying on 3 engines. Engine 2's cowling is missing entirely. The propeller frozen in feathered position. Smoke trails from a fire somewhere in the fuselage. But she is flying. And Miller is bringing her home. The bomber touches down hard, bounces once, settles. Emergency crews race alongside as she rolls to a stop. Jack reaches Red Queen as the crew begins evacuating. Miller climbs out of the cockpit, face grey with exhaustion. Blood streaks his flight suit, not his own, someone else's. "Engine 2?" Jack asks. Miller just shakes his head. "Coupling failed at altitude. Propeller wouldn't feather. We lost 3,000 feet before I could stabilize her." Jack climbs onto the wing and examines the engine. The cowling is gone, torn away by aerodynamic forces. The propeller hub shows stress fractures radiating from the coupling assembly. Exactly where Jack's repair should have held. The maintenance log will record this as mechanical failure, but Jack knows the truth. He knows the cold morning, the inadequate cure time, the choice to sign off anyway because the mission demanded it. Behind him, medics carry a stretcher from the waist section. The ball turret gunner, unconscious, shrapnel wounds across his chest. 2 other crew members walk under their own power, faces blank with shock. Miller watches the medics work. "We took fire from 3 FW-190s after we dropped out of formation. They knew we were hurt. They came for us." The mathematics of aerial combat are brutally simple. A lone B-17 is a target of opportunity. Fighter pilots are trained to exploit damaged bombers, to finish what flak started. Jack examines the coupling assembly more closely. The adhesive has failed completely, leaving the metal surfaces clean. No sign of bond failure under stress, just absence, as if the seal never properly formed. Wyatt arrives with the maintenance kit. "You want to pull the whole assembly?" "Yes," Jack says. "I want to see exactly what failed." But he already knows. The coupling failed because it was never properly cured. It failed because war does not allow time for 18-hour cure cycles. It failed because Jack signed off on a repair that was not finished. Operations sends word that the debriefing will begin at 14 real hours. Miller and his crew will describe the mission, the fighter attacks, the engine failure. Their testimony will become part of the official record, but the record will not capture the weight Jack feels now, standing on the wing of a bomber he nearly killed. The debriefing room smells like sweat and burnt coffee. Miller and his surviving crew members sit at the long table, answering questions about the mission. An intelligence officer records everything: target identification, flak concentrations, fighter tactics, bomb results. Jack listens from the doorway. He is not required to attend, but he needs to hear it. Engine 2 failed at 10:09 hours, Miller says. Coupling malfunction. Propeller would not feather. We lost altitude rapidly. The intelligence officer makes notes. And the fighter attacks? 3 FW-190s engaged us after we separated from formation, made 4 passes, concentrated fire on the damaged engine and cockpit area. Our gunners drove them off, but we took significant hits. The ball turret gunner did not survive. He died during the return flight, blood loss from shrapnel wounds. The waist gunner and radio operator are in the base hospital with injuries classified as non-critical. 1 dead, 2 wounded, 1 bomber barely flyable. The intelligence officer finishes his notes and dismisses the crew. Miller stops at the doorway, sees Jack standing there. "It wasn't your fault," Miller says quietly. But Jack knows better. Fault is a legal term, a word for investigations and tribunals. What Jack feels is simpler and heavier. Responsibility. He returns to the maintenance shed and examines the failed coupling assembly under better light. The metal shows no signs of fatigue or defect. The adhesive simply did not bond. Temperature, cure time, pressure, all the variables Jack tried to control in the darkness of the previous night. Wyatt watches him work. "What are you looking for?" "Evidence," Jack says. "Something to explain why it failed?" "You already know why it failed," Wyatt replies. "Same reason half the repairs on this base are temporary. We don't have time to do it right." That is the truth of war maintenance. The missions continue whether the repairs are finished or not. Crew chiefs make calculations every day. Risk versus readiness, safety versus necessity. Sometimes those calculations are wrong. Sometimes men die because of them. Jack writes his report for the maintenance log, describing the failure in clinical terms. He does not mention the cold. He does not mention the 50-second patch. By 16 hours on 27th January 1943, the casualty figures are finalized. 4 B-17s lost from the 100th Bomb Group, 40 crew members missing or killed. Red Queen returned, but 3 additional bombers are classified as Category E damage, too extensive for field repair, requiring depot-level overhaul. The numbers circulate through operations and eventually reach group headquarters. The 100th has suffered 11% losses on a single mission, nearly triple the acceptable rate. Jack sits in the maintenance shed, surrounded by work orders and damage reports. Red Queen requires complete engine replacement plus structural repairs to the fuselage. Estimated downtime, 6 days, assuming parts availability. But parts are not guaranteed. Engine inventory across the 8th Air Force is critically low. The production lines in America are working maximum capacity, but the shipping convoys face U-boat interdiction. Replacement aircraft and engines arrive sporadically. Wyatt brings the evening meal, reconstituted eggs and weak tea. "You need to eat something." Jack pushes the tray aside. "I need to understand why that coupling failed." "You already know why," Wyatt says again. "Temperature, cure time, pressure." "That's not enough," Jack insists. "There has to be a way to make these repairs hold under operational conditions." Wyatt sits down across from him. "Jack, there is a way. It's called grounding the aircraft for proper maintenance, but we don't have that luxury. The mathematics are clear. The 8th Air Force requires operational aircraft to maintain strategic bombing pressure. Every bomber grounded for extended maintenance is 1 less bomber over target. The mission demands outweigh individual safety. Jack knows this. Every crew chief knows this. The decision to sign off on marginal repairs is made 100 times a day, across every airfield in England, but knowing the necessity does not ease the wait. Outside, the sun sets over Thorpe Abbotts. The field grows quiet. Maintenance crews secure their tools. The flight line goes dark except for perimeter lights. Jack remains in the shed, studying coupling specifications by lamplight. He reads the technical manual section on adhesive properties, cure times, temperature coefficients. He searches for a variable he missed, a factor he could have controlled. The manual offers no answers. It simply describes ideal conditions that do not exist in wartime. 3 days later, on 30th January 1943, the maintenance advisory is updated. New guidance arrives from 8th Air Force headquarters. All fuel line coupling repairs must be performed in heated maintenance facilities with verified 18-hour cure time before aircraft release. The directive comes too late for Red Queen, too late for the ball turret gunner whose name Jack now knows, Sergeant Raymond Mitchell, age 22, from Ohio. Jack reads the directive in the maintenance shed. Wyatt reads over his shoulder. They're grounding aircraft for proper repairs now? For this specific issue, yes, Jack says, after they reviewed the failure reports. The bureaucracy of military aviation moves slowly. Incidents must be documented, patterns identified, directives issued. The system eventually corrects itself, but the correction always comes after men have died. Red Queen sits on the hard stand, engine cowlings open, replacement power plant waiting for installation. The repair work will take 4 more days. Miller and his crew are grounded pending aircraft availability. Jack performs the engine replacement himself, refusing to delegate. He torques every bolt to specification. He tests every seal, every coupling, every connection. He works in the heated maintenance hangar, following the new directive exactly. Wyatt assists, handing tools, checking measurements. They work in silence mostly, the rhythm of long practice. On the 4th day, the replacement is complete. Jack signs off on the work, his signature heavier than before. He knows this engine will hold. He knows the coupling will not fail, but he also knows that Red Queen will fly again. Miller will climb back into that cockpit. The bomber will return to the mission schedule. And somewhere else on this airfield, another crew chief is making another marginal repair in the cold darkness. Another 50-second fix. Another calculation of risk versus readiness. Jack walks the perimeter at dusk, watching the bomber formations return from the day's mission. 28 aircraft departed, 26 returned. The mathematics continue. The war does not pause for grief or guilt. The missions continue. The repairs continue. The calculations continue. And every morning, crew chiefs wake before dawn to prepare bombers that may not return. By mid-February 1943, the 100th Bomb Group's loss rate begins to normalize. New aircraft arrive. Replacement crews are assigned. The operational tempo increases as Allied strategic bombing intensifies. Red Queen returns to flight status on 8th of February. Miller and his crew complete 2 more missions before being reassigned to a different aircraft. The bomber is redesignated to a replacement crew, young men who know nothing of the coupling failure, the emergency landing, the dead ball turret gunner. Jack watches from the flight line as Red Queen lifts off on her first mission with the new crew. She flies clean, engines synchronized, all systems functioning to specification. The file in operations records the incident with clinical precision. Engine failure due to inadequate coupling seal. Crew casualties, 1 KIA, 2 WIA. Aircraft returned to service, 8th February 1943. But the file does not record what Jack carries. It does not record the weight of that 50-second fix, the sound of Miller's voice over the radio, the empty bunk that stayed empty. Wyatt finds Jack in the maintenance shed that evening. "You did everything you could," he says. Jack does not answer. He knows the truth exists somewhere between what was possible and what was necessary. He knows that every crew chief on every airfield makes the same calculations. And sometimes those calculations are wrong. The maintenance directive remains in effect. Heated facilities, 18-hour cure time, verified seal integrity. The new procedures prevent similar failures, but they cannot undo what already happened. On 3rd March 1943, Red Queen fails to return from a mission over Wilhelmshaven, the same target where Engine 2 failed. Luftwaffe fighters shoot her down over the North Sea. No survivors are recovered. The file closes without additional comment. The bomber is listed as lost. The crew is listed as missing. The statistics are updated. Jack receives the notification in the maintenance shed. He reads it once, folds the paper, files it with the other loss reports. Outside, the field hums with activity. Engines coughing to life. Bombers preparing for the next mission. The work continues. The war continues. The calculations continue. And every morning, Jack wakes before dawn.